Therapy dudes, take away your stress, put you in a good mood. If you had them over, they would eat up all your food. It's time for therapy dudes.
Hello, welcome everybody. It's a very exciting day for us here at Therapy Dudes because Andre and I have a special guest joining us, Anna Frost, who is part of Boulder Psychological Services. As you know, we are sponsored by Boulder Psychological Services. Please check out the website, boulderpsychologicalservices.com, for all of your therapeutic needs and to check out Anna's profile because she is an expert and part of our group and someone that Andre and I have gotten to know very well this year and are excited to have you on our talk today. We are going to be continuing. This is our final exploration, these next two podcasts, of issues around change that last. Anna, this started with looking at New Year's resolutions and then looking for how to make changes that work. What are some good strategies and tools to do that? And then looking at overcoming addiction. So this is our final week exploring this topic. And
Thank goodness, man. This
thank
this one's this one's getting to me.
Andre is in trouble because his goals for New Year's resolutions have been very, very tricky. We'll talk about that in the next
We
podcast.
really don't need to talk about it. It's fine. It's fine.
I think it's important, right? Being able to face
Right.
the things that you're concerned about
Oh,
is,
you're right. You're
you know,
right.
a step towards healing.
That's
Um,
true.
so I'm just going to toss out to the two of you something that I've been, experiencing in my own house. I think is probably a common theme for a lot of families is that screen addiction and being kind of stuck on either social media or our phones in general or games in the case of my two sons has become quite a thing. And I'm wondering if either of you have suggestions for how to address a situation when a loved one, a friend or family member really needs to change, but they might not want to. They might not be motivated.
Wow. So,
Yeah.
so you are not in charge of this, right? So
Right.
okay, so we're talking about somebody else, meaning how do you make your will uh done in someone else's court? Yeah?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Which might be, I don't know, that might be too much to look for. But if we're noticing somebody, suffering or doing something maladaptive like that, especially around things that are kind of addictive, or
Okay.
things that people make New Year's resolutions around, is there any hope? Is there any strategies?
I mean, if you're talking about family situation where, the parents are in charge, they get to call the shots, truly. I mean, they can say, okay, this is when you can be on screen, whether it's phone or um on their computers at all, phone or so what would it be like? I mean, that's just creating boundaries. This is a no. You can have all your feelings about it, but this is a no. We don't do that. We're not going to be
Right.
cultivating orientation in our family. I mean, when I think a lot of parents might, this is my guess, they have difficulty saying, drawing that line because they don't want the flack. They don't want the kickback from the kids who want to do it so badly and are really, in quotes, addicted.
Yeah.
It's
It's like
not
a
their
battle every
fault.
time. Yeah.
It's not their fault. The people that set it up in such a way that it makes for us to want to do it more than anything else that needs doing. So it's not their fault. It's a real setup, but it's our job as parents to say, enough already. We need for your brain to develop in other ways as well. But I mean, the task for parents to allow their kids to have feelings about that, to let your kids roll around and foam at the mouth and, have a total fit, and then say, let me know when you're done, because you're not going to get your phone.
It's less than pleasant, isn't it?
Right?
Yeah, but I think part of what I'm hearing you saying, Anna, is something that the Boulder Valley School District has recently implemented at the high school level, which is, sorry, like this is the new boundary. One of the things that I feel like was important that they did, and by the way, the new boundary is no phones at all from the first bell to the end of day school bell, even during lunch, passing periods off. And the piece that I like that they included was a real like exploration of why, because there's this increasing amount of research that's showing that kids are more anxious, they're less social, and they're having less success academically when they have their phones in their pocket during the school day,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, so that's actually data saying so, right?
right? So on the one hand, I feel like, well, if the schools can do this and get thousands of kids to, more or less be in compliance,
Hmm.
then as parents, we ought to do it too. But I feel like you're right that the pushback and the arguments are just, it's incredibly draining and it just starts to feel like, oh, like I can just look the other way and
Just avoid the
ignore,
issue for a little bit.
right, just ignore the issue. Or it's like, a parent comes home from their own, long, exhausting day and now has to like police screens. Um,
Yeah.
it's
Interesting
hard.
you use the word police
Hmm.
because when I think of this topic and I think of trying to change kids, I mean, I really equate kids to like inmates. Like you work on the same kind of stuff, behavioral changes. They'll try to get away with what they can. That's where I actually started out years ago. My first job was working with inmates
Hmm.
and trying to help them change behaviors that, like addictive behaviors or, criminal behaviors. And we would use something called motivational interviewing. I don't know if you two are too familiar with that, but basically what you're doing is you're trying to talk to the clients in a way that helps them align with a goal, that they come in the conclusion of that's the goal that they want, and you use a certain way of framing sentences, certain types of reflections that help them see that what they're saying either does or doesn't align with their goal. And then you're measuring for something called change talk. And change talk is like when someone says, "I will never quit doing X, Y, and Z," to, well, maybe I should consider quitting X, Y, and Z. And essentially that turns into intrinsic motivation because I mean, the way I'm saying it is like you're subconsciously programming them to think that it's their will that's being done. And I mean, if you're honestly like pushing them towards something that's better for them and they see that, it's a good thing, you know? Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. But I mean, it's such a difficult up road, giant boulder you're pushing uphill because you're working with somebody that is ambivalent in the first place, right?
Right.
It's so much easier. What is that old joke about, how do you change it? How many therapists does it take to change a light bulb, right? It's just one, but it's got to change, want to change.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
the want to piece, I think, is so needed. I mean, if we're not just going to be
Yeah.
swimming up swimming uphill, you know, it's so much easier to work with someone that has motivation. Not
Right.
everybody can
Always
take
is.
like
Yeah.
say, not everybody can take on
No.
here's the offer of a life buoy. You're out there struggling and you're not going to make it back in.
Hmm.
And there's a lot at stake, right? You might drown out there, but not
Yeah.
everyone has the talents to hook onto that life buoy and get the help that they need, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't even think most people are aware that what they're looking for isn't what they want, actually like need or want or what's the best for them. I think we're hijacked in many ways. Like we're addicted to phones, we're addicted to anything that gives us a quick dopamine hit. And I mean, kids are the worst when it comes to this stuff.
Right.
So, it's about finding languaging that connects with something they actually do really want. So, a kid might want to get into shape or, might want to be an athlete, but they never practice. So just highlighting that. So you wanna get into shape, but you're not going to leave your room all day. Not you actually in motivational interviewing, you don't use the word but. You just say and because it helps them connect that they're doing both of these things simultaneously. So if you say but, it negates what they were saying before that. So you want to get into shape and you're choosing to sit here all day and eat junk food. Okay. And it kind of does something, like they sit with that for a second and they kind of go, well, I mean, I see your point and I do want to get into shape. You just don't want to increase resistance. I think when it comes to change with children, you want them to come to their own conclusions. I think this is one of the ways you can do that.
Yeah, that's motivational interviewing is a takeoff from joining the resistance.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, if you join the resistance and they can't object. And so you take their place and join them, and then they can go on and have other thoughts, new thoughts.
Hmm. I like that. I also like that there is more really solid research out there. The Anxious Generation is a great book, and in fact, the Boulder Valley School District used that and its recommendations for making the screen change, but it has a lot of data in there that show how kids are far more anxious and depressed because of the like proliferation of screens in their life, and that this has been a recent and increasing change over time as screens have become more and more ubiquitous in our world. And
Mm,
that,
Yeah.
like, kids may not feel like they want to, give up their phone or their social media, but as a starting point, they probably don't want to be anxious and depressed. And that that's something that we could all, agree upon, and that might be a way to bring in some leverage and motivation for them to be willing to like take on these changes that are are hard.
yeah.
When you guys are working with young people,
Mm,
do they ever account for their depression and their anxiety for being on a screen?
Yeah, it's really interesting, Anna, because I feel like one of the most common things I'll get is them acknowledging that, like, oh yeah, I know this is bad for me. I know this is making me more depressed, but I
yeah.
still want to do it and I'm still just reaching for it. Like it's it's this habit that has been like so ingrained in them over time. And often there is this like thirst for it as a like go-to whenever there is a little like, break in the action, they're bored, they're lonely, they're
Yeah.
whatever. The screen is right there. And for those first few minutes, I think it feels pretty good for them. And then
Hmm.
over time it diminishes, right? Like a half hour later, 2 hours later, it's like, oh, I'm like a zombie on this thing. But
Hmm.
they feel powerless over their addiction, to borrow an AA term.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and there's a delayed gratification if you can't just have it right now. And what I think gets them to go there is I think they're looking for connection.
Yes.
And
I
so
agree.
there's loneliness epidemic. It's not sated. You can stay there, and then suddenly you're on social media telling you, the latest and greatest hair thing that's going to make you have ten friends,
Yeah.
and then it's empty, right?
Right.
Yeah.
No, I think it really does take a village for each kid. I think community is really important and powerful for children. And I think our version of community for children is, school, which is kind of I mean, nowadays I don't feel like kids are hanging out the way they used to. I feel
Mhm.
like they sit next to each other on their phones, you know? Like I've seen this. And when I was working at an at-risk high school, that was my internship actually when I was going through grad school. During the break period, everyone would sit kind of near each other, but they'd all be on their phones. It just felt like nobody was connecting, and this was their way of connecting. They would like each other's posts. They would say, "Nobody liked my post. I don't think anyone likes me, Andre." And I'd be like, I don't think that that's what's going on. Like I got them to start putting away their phones and all of us doing an activity together. And so many of their issues changed. Like they didn't feel as lonely. They felt more included. They didn't feel as depressed. They were looking forward to things. And I just think that, a big part of addiction for youth these days is to escape boredom. And like you said, Anna, a lack of feeling connected.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really like what you're saying, and it's refreshing because I think Andre and I have kind of like we know each other's talking points on this issue now, and it's nice to have a different voice and the thoughts that you're bringing to this conversation, I think will be really helpful for the listeners. I want to pick your brain on one last topic before we wrap up this podcast, and that would be if you're a parent hearing this and you're thinking, uh-oh, well, I've royally screwed this up because my kids are, there aren't any boundaries and they've been doing this for years and they're just, like, how do we reset the situation? How can we, if we've gone from being like way too loose, find a way to like tighten it up and get things back on track?
What's your thought about that though, Dan? I think you already know, don't you?
I know, but when I think about it in my own life, I'm like, oh, it's a bridge too
Well,
far. I'm
he's
too late.
failing at it, so we can't ask him. He's royally failed
You
already.
already,
So
you already know. You sit kids down and say, "Hey, look, there's going to be a new order around on-screen time,
yeah,
and this is how we're going to do it. You can have all your feelings, but this is going to be the no. I'm going to collect all your stuff. You're not going to have it. You can, you're going to have to do other things until you have the on-screen time."
yeah. See,
And no two
I,
families have to do it the same way. This
right,
is what works for us. You get a half an hour every night, and that's all. And then I'm taking all your stuff, and all of the kids, will have the same boundary. On the weekends, you can have, you know, maybe an hour or an hour and a half if they're going to be gaming or whatever. But
right.
this is it, because you need to develop your brain differently. You can hate
Yeah.
me. Hey, go ahead.
See, I struggle with this one because I really do look at them like inmates. Like kids are animals sometimes. Like you try to help them do something that's good for them, they resent you. They throw a fit and they just sneak it. They typically will just find other ways to get what they need. So this is where I really am a big proponent of, connect them to something intrinsically that they're motivated for outside of, and that could be hard to find. I'm going to be honest. It could be hard to find with certain kids, especially if their routine's been the same for years. But, I think more of the collaborative method of like, all right, let's figure out what you actually want out of life. Like, let's figure out like, why are you doing this so much? Show me why we're playing this game. What does this feel like? Isn't it boring at this point? Like, what would you rather do? Do you want to go on a walk? Do you want to do something else? Like, kind of this hands-on approach, but then also help them understand like they have more agency over their life than they think they do. A lot of people kind of just feel aimless and they don't know what to do, so they just do the same thing over and over again.
See,
And
I
I
I
think,
kind of, I kind of want to object because I
okay,
want
do it.
I want them, I want them to fall down. I want them to have
Yeah,
the feeling of being lost
yeah,
and being bored and not having immediate gratification and
right.
feeling, and that's perfectly to be part of the life. And so how are they going to navigate that?
Like being bored isn't a bad thing, you're saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. And what
I mean,
comes
wait
out of
until they
boredom
become
is
adults, right? It's pretty
say
boring.
again. Say that
Wait,
again.
wait until they become adults, right? It gets pretty boring.
I don't know about that.
Oh, just me? That's just me. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I see the angle you're coming from, Anna. Kind of letting them build what like a tolerance for boredom.
Yeah.
But like kids have too much energy. Like it's gonna
Yeah,
go
but I mean,
somewhere, I
if they have
feel like.
energy, let them roll around in the mud outside.
Yeah,
Let
there we
them
go.
loose. And,
There we go.
you're making the fence of safety for their brain. And then
Right.
they have to use their brain other way. And it needs to be up to them to fail, to falter, to find. It gives them initiative, helps them grow other
Yeah.
other way without hand holding.
Yeah, I
Nice.
can agree with that.
Well, and one of the things I'm really resonating with is that like that notion, Anna, that you're saying of let them feel their feelings, right? It's of course if I put a boundary in place, they're going to be upset, uh, tantruming some, but that's okay, right? Like learning how to like have those experiences and get over it is good for them, and it's good for me to be able to tolerate that and not have it impact, my willingness to put boundaries in place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, this has been a great exploration of this topic. Thank you so much, Anna Frost, for being a part of
Yeah.
this.
Thank you, Anna.
Again, check her out on boulderpsychologicalservices.com. Like and subscribe, and we are on to our outro.
Therapy dudes, take away your stress, put you in a good mood. If you had them over, they would eat up all your food. It's time for therapy dudes. Therapy dudes, take away your stress, put you in a good mood. Listen to them anytime you're coming unglued. Time for therapy dudes, time for therapy.